Hello everyone, welcome back to Sayanti Fine Arts. Today we are going to make our own dream catcher. I have been wanting to have my own personal dream catcher for a very long time, but I wanted it in a certain way. I wanted it half semicircle instead of a full circle, and I wanted peacock feathers and seashells on it. And let's be very honest, it's hard to find that kind of a typical dream catcher. So I thought, why don't I paint one for myself? That would work. Let's see how I painted my own dream catcher so that you can do the same for yourself.
I'm starting off with painting a background which closely resembles the look of a wooden fence, a kind of dilapidated fence. So I'm loading up my white flat brush with a lot of titanium white and just a touch of black and brown in either corners, and trying to blend that in smoothly. And you don't have to be at all very detailed or very particular about this background, because most of it will be covered by the dream catcher that we are trying to build today. Now I'm trying to draw kind of lines, and again you don't have to have perfect straight lines because most of it is again going to get covered. I'm adding a little bit of wood grain like details, which again you do not have to do it, but I thought if some of it shows from behind my dream catcher, it would look like as if the dream catcher is hanging on a fence. And that is what I wanted to portray here, so I added a little bit of those wood grain. Now I am starting off with my twig, which is the half circle kind of twig that I wanted to be the basis of my dream catcher. Generally dream catchers are round, but I'm building my own, so I can be as creative as I want to be. So it is a half circle here. I started off with a very dark brown tone, and then on top of that I built highlights of yellow oxide mixed with white. Then I'm pulling in different shades of blue, green, even a little bit of red, brown to create the highlights, shadows and lights and darks. Now you can see that I'm painting in a little bit of a shadow of the twigs. And I'm not doing a whole lot of shadows because I know most of it would be covered with once I paint the feathers. So I will come back and do the shadows once the basis of the painting is done. Next, I will block in the area of the shell with a gray color. Once that area is blocked in, I am coming with a brown color and putting in the sides. And then I will build highlights on top of it, starting with yellow oxide mixed with a little bit of white, and then slowly decreasing the amount of yellow oxide and increasing the amount of titanium white till I go to straight up titanium white for the final details. So this has to be done in layers so that you get the different shadows from light to dark, and thus create a lot of depth. And once the basics of the shell was made, or rather the starfish was made, I added some dark shadows around it. Now I'm blocking the general shape of the peacock feathers by using just straight up titanium white, because the background is brown, so I thought first I will put in the white and then paint on top of that. I painted 4 feathers, but I didn't want to be very repetitive, so I am showing you only 2 of the feathers that I have painted, the peacock feathers that were a part of my dream catcher. Now I'm building the general layout of the center part of the peacock feather with a yellow color mixed with a little bit of white, and then I'm coming back with cream colors and adding some more of orange, red, purple. All I'm doing is generally following the reference photo from which I'm working from. And I used a reference photo of peacock feathers from Pixabay here. Once again, I recommend Pixabay heavily for royalty-free reference photos ever. If you need some reference photos, they have reference photos of various different kinds. And one thing about peacock feathers is that you have to build in multiple layers. You cannot get to a realistic peacock feather just by getting the right color in the right place. This has to be done in multiple layers. Build the darks and lights and highlights and layer color on top of color to give the feeling of depth. Some greens and some white highlights, some added yellows, some white highlights again. And I'm mixing and matching. Sometimes I'm going dark, sometimes I'm bringing in highlights of light colors and building the general layout of the peacock feathers. Now for the center of the peacock feathers, I'm using phthalo blue mixed with a little bit of white and adding some phthalo green as well. And for the center of the center, I'm using phthalo blue mixed with a tiny bit of crimson to get a dark purple color. You will see that later I'll come back with even darker shadows of that purple to highlight the darker area, to contrast between the highlights and the darker areas. Some more purples on the feathers first, and then I will come back with lighter highlights of cream and white colors. And there you can see the almost finished feathers. Once I'm done with these feathers, I will add one more little feather, which is not the general peacock feather, but more like a feather probably from the wing of the peacock bird, to just build it all together, bring it all together and make it look like a cohesive painting or a cohesive charm. I don't think I can make this crafty thing on my own, so I thought I'll paint my own dreamcatcher and make it work that way. And it was really, really fun. And in the process, I also tried out how to paint peacock feathers. So for this little feather, I started off with white, then I added some light blues, and then I came back with purple, and finally with dark blues. And once I added the dark blue, while the paint is still partly wet, I will add some highlights with lighter blues and even whites. And that will finish the look of this particular feather. And at the very end of the painting, you will see that this little addition of this single feather makes a lot of difference in the whole painting. The last highlights on my feather, and there I have my own, very own dreamcatcher. Let me know what you think about it. Thank you for watching.